The past no longer exists. The future doesn't exist either. And these are two states that we beat ourselves up with all the time. And they don't even exist. And we suffer them. And that's the thing I'm trying to get for people is your past is tied from a psychological perspective. I apologize, I'm going on here. The past is tied to depression. The future is tied to anxiety. Right. Because most people, when they're depressed about their past. This happened to me, that happened to me. Lots and lots of other sages out there have said, the more that's happened to you in your past, the wiser you should be now. And the more troubling things that have happened, the wiser you should be. A lot of times we're not, we're just depressed. Right. And then the future, since we don't know what it is and we imagine it, but we're imagining based on our past experiences because we don't know what's going to happen. So we can only imagine thinking about what happened to us before, what might happen in the future, but we don't know. So you see what I'm saying? We're suffering these two parts of life that don't exist.
Welcome to Unmute with Priya, the podcast where silence ends, voices rise, and women rediscover the freedom to speak and live authentically, especially in life after 40. This show is proudly sponsored by Project Icon. I'm your host, Priya Sudarsanam. Let's dive into today's conversation. My guest today is Jan Raeder. Jan is a well-being educator, speaker, and author who's spent over 30 years helping people understand what it actually means to take care of themselves, but not just on the surface, but in a way that really changes how they live. Jan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, this is going to be a great conversation, and let's dive into how you got into this work. And first of all, you're the Self Care Sensei, so love the name.
Thank you.
So yeah, share a little bit more about how you got into this work.
Well, we could be here all day talking about all of it. I'll try to put it into some little boxes, I guess. I started training in martial arts over 30 years ago. And then, I wound up teaching and running the business and all of that. And then at a certain point in my life, I decided that I would go back to school. And so I had done the, college right after high school, which was a very long time ago. So I developed a certificate program. Hopefully, I was hoping it was going to be used in the university that I was at, but, things happen in academia and so on. That's, again, another conversation. But anyway, I did teach a course locally at a college about well-being theory. And then the pandemic happened, and I really didn't. I'm much better in person. I like the energy in the room. Because I'm a martial artist, I read the nonverbal cues, so on and so forth. So then during the pandemic, I decided to write my book, and which is based on the course, but I put a lot more into the book. But during that time, during the pandemic, I talked to a lot of people, and they were like, "Oh, you should bring your martial arts in," and so on. So that's why I decided to call myself the Self Care Sensei, because most everybody knows what that term sensei means, and it's connected to martial arts and so on. So I thought, well, that would be a good thing. I did a lot of research with that handle. And the only thing I found one woman on Instagram that had super long nails. Her nails were like this long, and she called herself the Self Care Sensei. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. You probably didn't train in the martial arts because you can't afford to have nails that long in the martial arts. Not that they're not weapons, but anyway. So I thought, I'm safe using it. So that's kind of how I got to that title and got to my book and things that I do. So, I've taught people a lot about, when I was teaching, I retired from the martial arts in 2018. But when I was teaching students, it goes just beyond, your kicking and punching. It's how your life is, and you learn so much about yourself deeply in an art like that I've been kind of doing that kind of work for a really long time, even before I did all the academic work in higher education. So I hope that answers the question.
Would you say that your background in martial arts has helped you to understand self-care?
I think so, because
Yeah.
one of the important things, and this is, I don't want to get too deep into it because, I don't want to put people's feet to sleep, because when you're a martial artist, you're interested in these types of things.
Right.
I did several, the organization that I was involved in, that I taught at and ran the business eventually, our students, when they tested for black belt rank, they had to write papers. And you had to do a lot of research. And I tested for several different black belt ranks. So I wrote a lot of papers. And one of the papers I wrote was actually about TCM, traditional Chinese medicine. And of course, I couldn't cover all of it because you're talking about 3,000 to 5,000 years of data. And, but I wanted to do some broad brush strokes. And one of the interesting things about martial artists is, not only do they have to understand killing techniques, but they also have to understand healing techniques. And the two things are married. So when you're looking at the systems in the body, the yin and the yang, the acupressure points, striking points, you kind of have to understand how they are connected to the body. So that's a really, without getting too far into it, but that's part of why I think I was looking into this work, because it's not just kicking and punching, it's understanding who you are at a really deeper level, both from a health perspective, a spiritual perspective, a psychological perspective, physical. It encompasses so much. Wow. I bet you didn't even know that.
No. And thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people have these beliefs around what martial arts is, but really there's this internal process that it really helps you to, the word that's coming up for me is illuminate, as you described that. For anybody who's listening to this, because we hear a lot now about self-care, could you just share, what does self-care mean? Because I think it could encompass so many different things, right?
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah. That's another reason for writing my book, for doing this work, because several years ago I had, actually before I wrote my book, I had people saying to me, oh, do these little videos and talk about wellness and talk about all of this. And I was like, oh, okay. So I did these little videos before. And one of the times when I did that is I Googled the word wellness. Wellness relates more to your physical health, like when you go to your doctor and you're getting, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, all of those, your weight, all those things. And like your physical activity, what you eat, that's kind of in the wellness world of it. Right. Your well-being is more your psychological, your emotional, your spiritual. But the two are together, because if you feel better emotionally, spiritually, then you feel better physically. And same thing, if you feel better physically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, you feel better. So the two things are together, but they're slightly different. So since I spent so much time with my feet in the physical camp, teaching people how to exercise properly, eat right, all of those things, I decided I wanted to get more deeply into the spiritual, psychological, that realm. You could have an incident that happened to you when you were like 7 or 8 years old. And then you told yourself a story about it. But unfortunately, the way our brains are and the way our memories are, we record memories in this sort of, because we have so much data coming in at us all the time, we can't possibly remember all of it. So we make these abbreviated filings. And then what happens is, you might have told yourself the wrong story about what happened when you were 7. Right. And now you've carried this heavy bag, possibly, all the way into your 40s. And now you're in your 40s and you're like, why do I always do that when people say this or do this? Or, that, and sometimes you can trace it back to that incident. Sometimes you can't. But I, what I try to get people to do is, maybe you told yourself the wrong story. Maybe you didn't remember it the actual way that it happened. And the bigger part of it is, when you're talking about Eastern philosophies, the past no longer exists. The future doesn't exist either. And these are two states that we beat ourselves up with all the time. And they don't even exist. So, and we suffer them. And that's the thing I'm trying to get from people is your past is tied from a psychological perspective. I apologize. I'm going on here. From the past is tied to depression. The future is tied to anxiety.
Right.
Because most people, when they're depressed about their past. You know, this happened to me, that happened to me. Lots and lots of other sages out there have said, you know, when the more that's happened to you in your past, the wiser you should be now, you know, and the more troubling things that have happened, the wiser you should be. A lot of times we're not, we're just depressed. Right. So, and then the future, since we don't know what it is and we imagine it, but we're imagining based on our past experiences because we don't know what's going to happen. So we can only imagine thinking about what happened to us before, what might happen in the future, but we don't know. So you see what I'm saying? We're like, we're suffering these two parts of life that don't exist.
Oh, I realized, hey, this story happened or this happened and I created a story and that has pretty much run my whole life. And but one thing that I really like about what you say is we're talking about midlife. This is Unmute with Priya. And this is, this is for men and for women, because I think you reach this point where you realize, hey, I've got this much time left. I've spent all this time doing this. And now what do I do with the rest of my life? But I really like how you said that you're not just focusing on the wake up moments, because I think in this time now where so many people are talking about spiritual awakenings and everything, and people are talking more about what happens during perimenopause, that it could stop there. It could just stop at, okay, I woke up. Now what? And I love that you help transcend those things.
Right. Well, that's what I say it at the very beginning of my book is I talk about it being a blueprint, because that is the big thing. I mean, every single person, I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you have, how much money you don't have, where you live, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a human experience. Every human is going to come up against a crossroad at some point in their life. Every single one of us. And your crossroad might look totally different than mine does. But there's the general ones. Relationship ends. Someone that you love dies. And that could be parent, spouse, child, someone close to you dies. Right. You lose a job. You create a new relationship. You get, these are things that are universal. All people experience one or more of those things. So those are the ones we accept as crossroads, as the big ones. And I'm sure I'm missing some. But then there's the small crossroads that something may happen to them. I left out the diagnosis, we get to a certain age and all of a sudden you get a diagnosis. And that's another big crossroad. But there can be smaller ones too. And those we could spend days and days trying to figure out what all those are. But every person comes up against something where all of a sudden maybe, and it's not maybe necessarily loud for everyone, but where you go, what do I do now? Who the hell am I? What have I been? Why am I, I did a lot of work looking into philosophers and such when I was in academia. And, I'm certainly not a philosophy major, so don't anybody hold me to anything. But where you wear these different hats and you're trying to figure out, who you are exactly. And there is an authentic self, but there are still these hats you still have to wear. Because, your authentic self might be very, very angry. That's not a good way to be, just as a side note. But you can't be that way every place, so you have to wear a hat when you're somewhere. Or if you're a parent, you have to be a certain way with your child. If you are, working, you have to be a certain way. So you're still wearing these hats. But down below that, like, what exactly is it that makes you tick? What is it about you that you like about you?
Right.
I don't like to get into all the bad things about us because there's lots of them. But, positive psychology is where I like to live, in positive psychology, because their philosophy is different from abnormal psychology.
Right.
In abnormal psychology, if you're -10, they want to get you to 0. Positive psychology, if you're -10, they want to get you to +10. They want you to transcend. They don't want you to just get you to, the balance point. They want you to transcend those things and live a life that's well lived. And when you're talking about subjective well-being, which is what we're talking about, it's subjective. I mean, I can't, if, I could read a little bit more about you and have Priya go, Priya is great. She has a wonderful life. And you may think your life stinks, so you can't tell anyone else. It's your own way you look at your life. And so that's where I go, where we're responsible for our own way in the world. And it's our choice of how we want to be. And that's where the wisdom and that's where the transcending comes in. Instead of deciding to be the victim, how can I take that and have it be fuel for my life going forward? Does that make sense?
Definitely, and definitely much more empowered perspective of addressing these things. And I'm seeing the connection now because with talking about self-care, people are often relating it to getting your nails done. Go have, treat yourself to something. But if you're really taking care of yourself, you're really going deep within yourself so that you're healing those parts that maybe that 7-year-old, you're really integrating those things. And then you're also learning that present moment's all we ever have. And when you're in that place, I know that for myself, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and it came with people thinking I had time to connect with people. And then once I decided I was going to connect with them again, I found out they had died. And it was not just one person. It was about 5 people that I knew in the past. And it hit me that this is all we have. This is all we ever have. So I don't need to worry about anything. And I'm done sitting in that energy of the past. I'm done telling that story. It really was like, and so I resonate with what you're saying because that's when I started to take care of myself.
Yeah. Well, and listen, I'm not telling people to ignore their past. That's not my message here. My message is to take the 30,000-foot view of your past. Instead of being mired and wallowing in it and being the victim and feeling like I'm drowning in it, try to rise above it and look at it from up here and detach for a moment from it and say, okay, so that happened. Well, what can I do with it now that can make me grow and that makes me a better person for everyone around me and for myself? And, because this is a scenario that I say all the time to people. I go, we're all on a train. Each one of us is on a train. You're on the Priya train. I'm on the Jan train. And we're the ones that are on the train from birth until death. Now, right now, you and I are on the same train because we've connected. So, and it'll depend on how long you ride the train with me or vice versa. But people get on and off that train. But the bottom line is you are on the train for the entire time. The relationship you have with yourself is the longest relationship you're ever going to have.
Yeah.
So if you don't make it the best relationship, all the other interactions with people are going to stink. Because every time, if you're trying to present your best self in every situation, well, every time you're bumping into other people in the world, they're getting your best self. And so guess what happens? A lot of times you'll get their best self. Right. And that's not to say, and that goes, we're going to shift over to the not taking things personally. Then but when you do this work on yourself, you realize other people have gone through these things. You're not alone. You're not the only person that's gone through difficult things. I'm sorry, but that's what we feel like. You know, when we're in the middle of a problem, we're like, oh my God, the world's going to end, because we can only look at it through our own eyes. And what what I'm trying to get people to do is take a step back and go, okay, it's going to actually work out. In my life, every single trauma, problem, difficulty that I came up against, guess what happened? It always worked out.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't always work out the way I thought it should, but it always worked out. And to be honest with you, when you take the 30,000 foot view, the majority of the time it worked out for the best. And,
yes,
you know, and that's by getting rid of that regret piece that I've talked about before, tied to depression, regret, sadness, all of those things. So when you think about, like, you know, for example, I tell the story through, you know, and I'll try to make it brief here. When I was managing the business that we had, and it was a small business. Trust me, it wasn't a big, you know, IBM or whatever, you know, Google or whatever, small business. And I had bad advice from an insurance person, and they said, you know, oh, you don't need to have workers' compensation for you, because we'll just call you the secretary of the business. I was like, oh, okay, fine. I don't know, because I wasn't an insurance person. I taught martial arts and, you know, paid some bills, you know, that kind of thing. So this was many years ago. All of us, and we're, you know, the business is located in New York State. So we got, fast forward like 15 years. I get a letter from the state saying we owe them $289,000.
Oh my God.
Because of this bad advice.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I thought I was going to die right there and then on the spot. So I contacted my CPA and I said, oh my God, I got this, you know, blah, blah, blah. He gave me some great advice. He told me every time you get a letter, write a letter. And he gave me an internal person, whatever. Over the course of time, probably about a year, took me about a year. Finally, I got a final letter. And when I say final, it's because I responded in a different way. That we owed $344. So I paid.
Okay.
Because I had $344.
Right.
So I paid. Throw the $289,000 letter in the trash and ignore it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but I hope that gives somebody an example of, I mean, that's a major thing in business to have that happen to you, you know, and it worked out. It worked out.
The universe is always conspiring with you.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
Now, if you sit for a minute with it and you go, yeah, does it suck right now? Do I feel terrible? But what can I learn about me while I'm doing this? You know, the majority of time people do this. They do this. And if you notice, I'm doing this 3 fingers. I'm pointing a finger at you, but 3 are pointing back at me. So when we do this and blame everybody else for everything else that's going on in our lives, 3 fingers are pointing back at me. How can I change? How can I be different? What can I learn? Is what is. So this kind of ties into about not taking things personally. You know, when every single person, like I mentioned before, is going through something, they're having a crossroad, they're having this, they're having that. And maybe they didn't handle the stuff that when they were 7 and now they're like exploding because it's tied to those emotions that they never handled as a kid and I'm not even going to get into all of that because everybody, I think when I say that, everybody kind of goes, I get what she's talking about. So everybody's going through this. So if I come up against somebody who's having a tough time and maybe they say something they didn't mean and I take it personal, 99.9% of the time when you're dealing with a difficult person, it has nothing to do with you. But we want to make it about us because that's what we are.
Because that's what we do. We make everything about us.
That's what we do. Yeah. And we tell all our friends, we go, oh, that person was nasty. Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And you go, and that's, you know, I mean, what did they say? Like the first form of communication was gossip. You know, I mean, it's a form of gossip to be doing that. I know sometimes people need it as a, you know, release. They need to blow off steam. You know, I get that, whatever. But I think that's what, and we see it now so much. I mean, you must see it when you talk to people.
You see it all the time.
Yeah, when people share these conversations with you, you must see that we take things so personally. Stop it. Stop doing that.
That's often my question that I'm asking the person. Did they really say that, or is that what your perspective of it is?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Because they'll say, yeah, because people are quick to jump to conclusions about, oh, this person said this. I don't think they were happy with me. And I'm like, did that really happen?
Right. Right. And you know, you're so right. I love that you just said that, because remember what I said earlier about our negativity grabbing brains. The very first thing, you know, like if you're, let's say you're going to go for a new job and you think so badly, I want this job. I want it. And let's say the universe says, nope, you're not getting that one because that door closed, but that window is open. And that's the window we want you to go out right now, because there's a better opportunity over here. This is a better fit for you. And you don't know that. You don't necessarily know that. But you then go, oh my God, I'm a terrible person because I did this in the interview. I shouldn't have done that. I beat myself, all these things. And that's negative. That's from the negativity grabbing brain that we have. Instead of saying to yourself, okay, so that didn't work and there's a reason why it didn't. I don't know what it is, but there's a reason. What did I learn in the interview? Maybe I need to refine what I'm talking about. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I need to present myself a little bit differently. Maybe the people in the room were having a tough day and I didn't know about it, So you just don't know. And if you, like you said, jump to a conclusion, you don't know if it's right. You can't read their mind. And this is stuff I learned from fighting over 10,000 rounds in the martial arts. Yeah. Because the minute you take something personally, you've lost.
Right.
And when I say that, that's like, if somebody hits me hard and I get mad, guess who lost? Not the person who hit me hard, me.
You, yeah.
I did, because I got distracted by that. And just as a side note for me, I loved it when people hit me hard, because personally, I took it as a sign of respect from them that they thought I could take it. So do you see how I flipped that?
Definitely.
Instead of going, oh my God, they're a jerk, they hit me really hard. No, they're not. They think you can take it. They think you're tough. They think you're great. They're respectful because they're doing that. If you have a loved one, I say this all the time to people, if you have difficult loved ones, because I've had many, some of them are deceased now, but when you have a difficult loved one that is kind of raw with you, I'm using raw as a safer term, but I think you guys all know what I mean. Change raw to something else in there. That is a sign that they feel safe with you, that they can be that way. They can, blow off steam if you want. They feel like they can say whatever they want because they feel safe with you. So instead of getting your back up, and I'm not, listen, I don't want anybody to think that I'm allowing people to be abusive, because that's not what I'm talking about. But when the person is like that, instead of getting your back up and getting upset, take it as a compliment. And when I say that to people are like, wait, what? Because they yelled at me? I should take that as a compliment? And you go, yeah, because they felt safe enough. And these are close relationships. I'm not talking about the general person that's in the grocery store. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, your significant other, your father, your mother, your cousin, your sister, whatever. Instead of doing, flip it on its head, go, they feel safe enough, and say that to the person. I'm so glad that you feel safe enough with me that you can express yourself that way with me.
That's a great spin on things. Yeah. Cause I'm thinking about a family member who does that exact thing right now. And it usually,
you right away, you want to, because everybody gets defensive right away.
Right. Yeah.
And if I'm going to put it into a karate metaphor, when you're sparring with people, the best place to be is at the 45. Okay. Because when we're sparring, we're going back and forth like this. So if this person comes at me and I can go to the 45, I have
Right.
much more options there. Do you see the difference
Yeah.
between, and I know some people are just going to be listening to this, but some will view it. But you have it like this, or you can do this. So when you say to that person in a gentle way, you don't want to yell it at the person. You just, after they've done their thing and they're done and they take a breath, and if you say to them and look them directly in the eye and say, I'm so grateful that you feel so safe with me, that you can share these things this way with me. Looking at it as a blessing. What did it do for your family? It brought your family closer together. It made you understand how precious life is and that you should be living every single moment to its fullest whenever you can. Because if you don't, you are not honoring that 9-year-old that's not here to do that.
Yeah, definitely. To take those few minutes of pause and be like, all right, I know what happened. All right.
Right.
This
Well,
is not about me.
that's that moment of self-awareness.
Yeah.
My grandmother said to me once, the sandpapery people in your lives are the ones you want because they smooth out your rough edges.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And I was like, God, that was so great. I mean, I'm a big cliche person, but, and when you think about that, every difficult person that you come up against, if you flip it on its head and you come away with it away from it as a better person, you're not going to change them. Let's be real about that.
Yeah.
Oh, you can only change if you want to change. You cannot change another person. So, but what can I learn about myself from that person? How can I come away with this in such a way that makes me a better person, so that when I am faced with a difficult situation, that someone's in front of me now, how can I be better in that situation? I mean, does that make sense?
It totally makes sense, Jan. And I feel like we could keep talking for hours and hours because this is such a great conversation. Yeah.
Told you I could go on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, let's get you on Joe Rogan. If you're listening to this,
come on, Joe, call me up.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we're wrapping up our episode. You've shared so many great examples, just even personal examples of what this work is about and what self-care is. I think you're really helping redefine that for the listeners, because this is not just a temporary fix. This is, how can you just feel well? How could you feel well in yourself for the rest of your life? So for anybody who's listening, how can people start working with you? How can they get access to you?
Well, my book is for sale. We didn't even talk about that because we got in. I went way off on a tangent. My book is called Strive for More. M period, O period, R period, E period. Stands for meaning, optimism, relationships, and engagement. And these are 4 key pillars to well-being. So anytime you strengthen any one of those pillars, you're working on the other ones because they all overlap. Yeah. So what's nice about it is it makes it a clear blueprint for how you can move forward. So what I say is, I'm the paperback coach. If you want me to coach you, buy my book, read my book, keep it on your nightstand, go back to it, float back to it. The only other thing that I do is I do speak to small businesses. I personally prefer, I like small businesses because I was a small brick and mortar business owner, and I know how difficult. So any of the business owners that are out there that may be listening to this, I know how difficult it is to have maybe somebody come in that wants that but you can't pay this crazy amount of money for, I don't know, famous people. You can't have Tony Robbins come and talk with your group, or, any of these other people. But you want this kind of thing. So I like to work with that. And I also like to work with smaller groups of people because there's more that can actually happen when you have that smaller energy that happens. On my website, it's selfcaresensei.com. There's more information about my speaking. I have 3 different talks that I do. I did speak at MIT. That link is on my website. That's an 18-minute talk. It was recorded by a company that is they're trying to compete with TED Talks.
Be sure to put all those links in the show notes, put the links to the book so people can get the book. And yeah, like I said, we could definitely have a longer conversation about this, but you definitely shared so much wisdom just in this one episode that I think people can start putting to use right away and really just saying, hey, I'm doing this in my life and I want to be happier.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, it all starts with you, and you can do it. You have the ability to do it, and you're worth doing it for. Seriously, you may feel worthless right now because of what's happening, but you are definitely worth it. Don't give up on yourself.
What a great message. Jan, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm excited for this episode to come out. And this show was brought to you by Project Icon.